The reality is that geoeconomics are now very much a part of the way in which business leaders, investors, participants in the market think. And what we've seen over time, I think, is a reality check on the ability to just put uncertainty to one side and look at the longer-term trends. And that's what I and others seek to do. There's no question that the geopolitical environment continues to make waves. But what's interesting when you really look at it is that the actual markets and many businesses have continued to make progress in spite of all the noise and the activity around us. And I suspect that's what we're going to continue to see. Just look at what happened over the last 12 months and think about the scale of the geopolitical activity. And yet, the global economy enters 2026 with growth rates expected to be around 2.9%. We've seen the US economy remain resilient. We're seeing China looking for growth towards 5%, we think around 4.8%, and that's in spite of the backdrop that you highlight. Tariffs are a part of life. I think business leaders are learning to live with them and understand that in that context, what really matters is how their businesses perform, and for investors, how you factor that into your decision making.
Now, when you talk about these trends and looking at the long-term trend, how do you see capital flows and how are they being impacted in the region? Is there a shift away from the United States and more focus on Asia? How do you see it?
I think it is true to say there's a lot of renewed interest in Asia and renewed interest in China. Part of that has come from the resilience and indeed the impressive way in which technology has been developing in this part of the world. Part of it has also come from the resilience of the underlying economies, many of which have this two-tier system where the sophisticated technology-based enterprises are doing well and consumption is more sluggish. But on the whole, I think Asia is very much in the eye of the attention of international investors, and that does reflect itself in the flows. I think it's important to note one thing. It's not that there's a big rotation out of the United States. Some of that will make its way to Asia, and that's what we're seeing. China, India, Japan, Korea, very much on the attention of international investors.
You've named some countries there, and I want to pick on North Asia. We're looking at records being set on markets in Korea, in Taiwan. Japan is near record highs. I think this has to do with the AI epicenter. The supply chains are here. What are your thoughts on these particular markets?
Well, if we take Korea, I was at an event which seems like a lifetime ago, a year ago, when the Kospi was around mid 2,500, and the event was called Kospi 5,000. Well, Kospi 5,000 happened last week. That historic moment has arrived. And now the question is where from here? And part of the answer, of course, is where you highlighted, AI. Korea does benefit from some of the geopolitical tailwinds, and it certainly is benefiting from the sense that its technology companies, and in particular in the semi space, will take advantage of this moment and will be beneficiaries of what we're seeing with AI. Taiwan, again, you look at Taiwan and you've seen a lot of activity there. My birthday was when the Taiwan dollar tantrum happened, May the 5th, and yet here we are. I actually was in Taipei last week and had a chance to meet with a number of leaders, and there is a renewed confidence around the technology sector. And you meet with some of the companies there that really are at the bleeding edge of the technology innovations that are occurring. Japan's more a story of corporate governance reform. And I think the continued sense that topics reform is happening and that companies, and we saw some news on that later last week as well, which gives urgency or confidence to the sense that the underlying corporate governance changes will indeed lead to more activity. And with the arrival of sponsors, activism, and other factors, that bodes to the topics moving in a northerly direction.
Is there any market in particular that you do favor? I was in Taiwan recently as well. I happened to be there when the trade deal was announced with the United States. So more investments going over in the hundreds of billions from many of these North Asian economies. Do you have any favorites in the region?
You know, I have to love all my children equally. I'm responsible for the Asia Pacific for Goldman Sachs. And the reality is, I think if you look at these markets, there's actually a pretty strong tailwind for most of them, including China equities, where we have a call to see China equities rise by about 20%, Korea by about 19%. So these are big numbers. And the numbers, I think, reflect the reality that we were just discussing. The tailwinds now are quite strong. Of course, there are going to be bumps in the road, so it's not going to be a straight line. But I think when I look across the markets we've been discussing, I think all of them has a lot to look forward to this year.